Hello everyone and welcome back to another one of my videos. Today we will create a simple card with minimal stamping and coloring. The card we will be making today is a goodbye greeting with the beautiful Seattle skyline as the focal point. I chose to keep this card simple and heat emboss the entire focal point using black pigment ink and clear embossing powder. You could add color and more texture if you'd like. Before we get started, please hit the subscribe button and click on the notification bell icon so that you don't miss any of my videos. Let's take a look at the stamps I will be using for today's video. For my focal point, I'm using the Sketchy Cities America stamp set from Altenio. It is a 4x6 stamp set with beautiful sentiments designed so that you don't have to be from Seattle to enjoy these stamps. And for my main sentiment, I'm using this Voyage stamp that I got off of Amazon. All the products that I will be using today will be listed in the description box below. Before we start stamping, let's work on the layout of our card. I find it convenient to mark the positions of my focal point before I go ahead with any stamping or die cutting. I'm using a cloud border die to cut out the top edge of my cardstock. Using my Cricut Cuttlebug die cutting machine, I cut out the cloud border. If you notice, the die that I used was not long enough to cover up the entire card. So, once I die cut the first part, I will align the die to the edge of the cut portion to get a continuous border. Once I have my cloud border ready, it's now time to stamp the focal point. Since I will be heat embossing my focal point, I will use the anti-static powder tool over the paper to avoid any stickiness on the paper. This will ensure that the embossing powder falls only on the stamped image and does not get distorted in any other portion of the cardstock. I'm using a black pigment ink for stamping. I stamp the image a couple of times just to make sure I have proper blend of ink all over my image. Using a stamping tool helps with this process. I can now take my cardstock out of the stamping tool and pour a generous amount of embossing powder all over the stamped image. Since I am using a clear embossing powder, I will tilt the cardstock against a light source to ensure that the embossing powder fell on every part of the stamped image. You could stamp the image with a regular black ink or a pigment ink. By adding the embossing powder to the black pigment ink, it will give our focal point a beautiful shine. Make sure your heat gun is well heated and has been running for a while. This will prevent any kind of heat warping. In case your cardstock bends due to excess heat, just place the cardstock under a pile of books or run it through your die cutting machine to straighten it out. Our focal point with the cloud border is now ready. You could add a sentiment and adhere the card front onto a card base and call this card done. I cut out another piece of the cloud border for some added effects and texture. You could layer these two pieces flat on the card front or add foam tape for some extra dimension. I stamped the Bon Voyage sentiment using the same black pigment ink and clear embossing powder. I used the exact same stamping technique that I used for my focal point. I use a piece of cloth or a notepad to apply even pressure on my stamps. Again, I stamp the sentiments twice to get an even coverage of the ink. I'm using the Ranger clear embossing powder. This is my favorite embossing powder so far. Don't forget to check out my Instagram page for some fun pictures and videos. It's always fun to stay connected through different platforms. Also, feel free to share your thoughts and ideas in the comment section below. Let's add a pop of color to our card front. I'm using distress inks in 2 different shades of blue. Here, I'm blending the colors using a blending brush. Since the cardstock is white, I like to use a sticky note paper to cover my fingers so that I can avoid any ink smudges. I do this for any light colored cardstocks. Now that the front panel and the pre-folded card base is ready, let's assemble our card. I'm using a strong double-sided tape to adhere the top cloud layer. This will go flat on the card base. For the layer with the focal point, I'm using double-sided foam tape for some extra dimension. I used my foot ruler and aligned it with the grid lines on my work mat to make sure that both my cloud panel and the panel with the focal point are lined up straight on the card base. Some final touches for our card, a little extra love. I'm using the Nuvo Crystal Drops in the shade Duck Egg Blue. I like to squeeze a couple of drops around the card front. Use a look at the finished card. You could put in a white panel inside the card for a handwritten greeting. Let's work on our envelope. I'm using the VR Memory Keeper's envelope punch board. The card that we made today is an A2 size card, for which we will require an 8.5 by 8.5 size paper to make the envelope. Once the envelope paper is ready, align the left edge to score line measurement. For an A2 size card, we will score at 3/4. Punch and score at 3/4. Now, rotate the paper 90 degrees counterclockwise and align the score mark to the score guide. Repeat the same steps for all 4 corners. Round the edges using the reverse punch. The final envelope will have an approximate 1/8 inch margin on all sides. Once the envelope is ready, fold the flaps along the score lines and apply strong adhesive on the shorter flaps. Seal the 3 flaps and keep the top flap open. Before we put in our card, let's decorate the envelope. I'm using the same blue distress inks to create the cloud pattern on my envelope. A little heat embossed sentiment finishes our envelope, ready to be mailed out. Here's a look at the finished card. Hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and share it with your family and friends. Your love means a lot to me and my channel. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again for joining me today. Hope you have a wonderful day and see you in my next video.